Viewing the president's speech was joined this morning now by Mr. Babarinsa, who is a former executive director of TEL, and he's now the chairman and editor-in-chief of Gaskia Media Limited. What's that?
Well, we deal in special publications, publication of magazines.
Okay.
For special occasions and for historical happenings.
Okay. But listen to this speech. I mean, first it was moved from 7 to 8, then it was live. Journalists didn't have any copy until that morning, and so they couldn't put to bed, and they were all just waiting, perhaps with bated breath, to see what will this be, and when it comes, how shall we approach it? And then they didn't wait for 10, 15, 20, they waited almost for 1 hour. And so when you, at the end of the speech, what were your thoughts?
Well, I think the president may have been thinking about giving the nation a proper surprise instead of the usual thing where the president's speech would have been available about 24 hours before that time and would have been delivered. So I think it's okay. It's part of President Jonathan's attempt to occupy his office in its full majesty.
But you know, when you're in the press, everything is not usually okay. When you have to put to
no, I understand that. But you can see that the reporting of the speech has to be done today in the newspapers. Or like what would have happened on the day of the anniversary, the president's speech would have been published. Usually it will be given earlier, and then they will ask us to embargo it for publication. But maybe for their own strategic.
It looks like the embargo instruction, which is the tradition all over the world in the profession. Once you say it should be embargoed till a certain time, has not been adhered strictly by the media in Nigeria.
Because some media houses have, I don't know, because we are living in an extraordinary time. Some people have been breaching that professional ethics. When it is embargoed, even what is inside should not be discussed at all until the day of the publication. But I think there have been breaches on some part of our professional colleagues. I'm not saying that is the excuse for this. Okay. That was because I'm not part of the reason for it.
But people have been responding to this speech now in different ways. One of which is, of course, while he gave the speech, they now focused on the last part, and they now distracted those who wanted to digest the speech. There was riot, protest here and there, and you ask yourself, wait a minute, how come? Was it a strategy on the part of the government to drop that last bit, and now we're here? You can't actually do that. There has to be an act. You have to amend the act establishing the university before you take that decision. When you saw that protest, and did you eventually say, oh dear, this wasn't properly thought out?
Well, I'm an old student of the University of Lagos.
Oh, great.
And we regard UNILAG as a special institution. But let us ask ourselves, because people are focusing mainly on the extraordinary decision taken by the president to rename the great University of Lagos after Chief Moshood Abiola, an extraordinary person. If this decision had been taken in 1998, immediately after Abiola died, I'm sure there would not have been protest. What has happened is that the passage of time has lessened the sensitivity of Nigerians to the enormity of the sacrifice of Abiola. So I believe that with some time, people will reflect. I know that for us, this is an extraordinary honor for an extraordinary man. This country has passed through 3 major stages. First was the fight for independence, which was led by 3 great men, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, Alhaji Ahmadu Bello, and Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe. Then the Nigerian Civil War. The third one has been the struggle against military rule. The most important hero in that struggle is Chief Moshood Abiola. And this country has delayed and deterred in honoring his memory. I think President Jonathan has paid our debt substantially.
I think even yesterday, some of the best opposition men in the opposition have actually said that he was right in that regard. Not that anyone has actually criticized him for naming or the investor, but they say, well, we should follow the rule of law, that we're not in a military where you can now use the decree to just single-handedly cancel all else and put a name on the university. Even now lawyers have been on that particular matter. That means we have to go back to the law books, and which they say the laws established in the University of Lagos doesn't give anyone whatsoever the right to do that without first amending the act setting up that university. Now it goes back to what we talked about with our last guest, the advisors and those who should be telling the president what exactly it is.
Well, I regard this pronouncement as a presidential pronouncement.
Does a presidential pronouncement cancel an existing law?
No, wait, it is not equal to the law. The University of Lagos was established by law, and I will expect that the president will follow this up by sending a bill to the National Assembly to amend the law. The University of Lagos was created by the National Parliament. So that law still subsists, it is in existence, and I don't think the pronouncement of the president will override that law, and I believe he will take appropriate. Don't forget, the speech is the speech. It is immediately because the president has made an announcement, but the process has to be followed.
So I
don't expect that that's immediately, because that word immediately will override the Act of Parliament. I believe this is a democratic government, and people have access to the law, to the court of law. But I would expect that after this, that immediately will take effect by going to the National Assembly.
Well, maybe that will be what our guests might refer to as working from the answer to get into the question. But that is not. He was also talking about the brand of the school, that,
yes, a very, very extraordinary brand.
Yes, a very, very extraordinary brand, and that it can't just be, thrown away just like that, rebranded as it were. I mean, there was really nothing wrong with the brand as it were. That's one, and that's, some people would have gone to the school simply and only because of that name, Unilag. But what do you have to say to that first?
About the rebranding?
About the rebranding as it
were. Without sounding modest, our school is, when you look at the response of young people, our school is regarded as the greatest in this country. Many young people want to go to the University of Lagos. But as I've stated earlier, we are talking of an extraordinary man, representing an extraordinary event in the history of our country. So the president may have been thinking about merging two strong brands. It is not unusual to take this extraordinary step in certain circumstances. If you remember that after the end of the Vietnamese Civil War, or war, you cannot call it because the other countries were involved, the capital city, Phnom Penh, was renamed after the hero of that war, Ho Chi Minh. So a whole city to represent the sacrifice of Vietnamese for those decades of the war. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was named after the founder of that kingdom, Prince Saud. So we've had extraordinary things that have happened.
Were they protests when they were named?
Those are not democracies.
No. I said
they're not democracies anyway.
No. Wait.
Saudi Arabia.
Vietnam. You are right. But what I'm saying is this: that this country has delayed for 14 years. Those who are just 5, 6 years old at that time are now graduates of the University of Lagos. And they were not part of that serious historical process. They were learning about it. Part of the protest, you can see, because the thing was so sudden, people were expecting that if the president was going to do something about Abiola, because we have been asking about this for all this while, it might follow popular opinion by naming the National Stadium or other things like that after the former president.
Or something, a symbol of democracy. Some people will say, what exactly is the correlation between the University of Lagos and honoring Abiola on Democracy Day? So they would have imagined that maybe a political institution would have been named after him, or maybe something that he even stood for, as in the world of sports. We all know that he was a great sportsman.
Yes, pillar of sports in Africa.
So the thing is, do you see any correlation between honoring, yes, we need to honor our heroes past, yes, we need to maybe name institutions or days after them. But did you see any correlation between Unilag and Chief Moshood Abiola?
Well, there may be no linear correlation. First and foremost, Chief Abiola was not lucky enough to attend Unilag. He attended another institution. He was a staff of Unilag. He was an accountant with the Lagos University Teaching Hospital, Luton in Idiaraba, before joining, I think, FISA or ITT. That was basically his personal relationship with Unilag. But I believe that Lagos was the hotbed of that protest. And many of the decisions that were taken were really in this city. This was the city of, not just MK Abiola, but his wife, Kudirat. His wife was killed in this town. Many other people like Chief Afrere Rewane were also killed in this town over the same struggle. They've not been properly honored. This country has not cited anything. They've not even been mentioned. So we are talking of a long list that Nigerians need to remember. Those people, as the Vice Chancellor will say on Convocation Day, the Abiola is holding starting proxy for them. So when you are honoring Abiola, you are not honoring him alone. You are honoring all these other people for whom it stands proxy.
All right, we have actually, the daughter spoke on this matter. Perhaps we'll get it in a minute. But speaking about, because some say nothing wrong with intention, but they consider it as political correctness gone awry. Because number one is that, the lawyer here says, how do you say it takes effect immediately? Because students who are there actually applied because of the name, University of Lagos. Why doesn't it start in a year? And so, as much as they can, presidents don't like to be seen taking back their words or changing certain decisions. But in this case, even if you get to the National Assembly and to amend it, they say, well, for what the people say, they don't want this. So it looks a bit tricky here, because if you go there and that happens, number one, he'll look bad because you have to change the decision on that one. And then those who apply because they say, no, you can't change this now, let it start from next year. So it all just looks a bit...
You are talking about procedure, whether the president should not use presidential pronouncement to know about his intention. Well, as I said earlier, I believe the procedure will still be followed. It is now on the president and his men to ensure that the parliament will back them. If they fail in that way, there is nobody to blame for that apart from themselves.
Let's listen to this and then add it and talk about it afterwards.
The historic election in 1993 and has not been recognized by our federal government system. It's been well over a decade, going into 2 decades since that historic victory. And so I think, yes, it's long overdue that Abiola be recognized. But what he did was to lead a fight for democracy based on a campaign that said that Nigerians would say farewell to poverty under his leadership. As we know, he was never allowed to become president of Nigeria, and yet we still have poverty across the land. Indeed, we have more poverty today than when MKO Abiola won the historic election. So what I want to say to President Jonathan is that what we can do to honor the heroes past is to make sure that they did not die in vain. Nigerian people are still poor. Majority of them are poor today, even more so than 1993 when he won his election. And I hope that President Jonathan can apply himself to addressing poverty in Nigeria. That's the most important thing, more than naming schools, naming roads. Those things are nice, but the true benefit for my father is that the Nigerian people should not be poor anymore.
How do you respond to that?
Yeah, it's great. It's great. That is, you can see that she's the daughter of her father.
Some will say naming that school is besides the point.
So, no, naming the school is not beside the point. People followed worldwide. People name institutions after heroes. People name their children after their heroes. Many old students of Unilag, they are still, may not be happy about the renaming because it affects the brand in their own way. But as I said earlier, they are joining 2 extraordinary brands to see whether one can affect the other. it will be expensive in the short run, but ultimately I think it will be good.
Really?
Yes, ultimately, because there is no way. I believe in terms of its international stature, in terms of its academic attainment, in terms of its perception from the Nigerian youth, the UNILAG will still be UNILAG.
Well, a quick one before we leave now. Okay, very instructive there. You agree with her that we're still very poor. We still have very poor
Nigerians
here.
are poor.
What would you be saying to the president if you were to advise him?
Nigerians are poor. Part of the poverty, you can see it for the ravaging epidemic of ignorance. Nigerians are not reading anymore. Nigerians are not learning. Even ordinary tailoring, all these tiles making, Nigerians are not learning. And there is no other way to get out of poverty apart from acquiring knowledge. So if young people are not acquiring knowledge, there is no country that will be rich without people working. So I believe that the president has a duty to really attack poverty in the way it should be attacked. That is people acquiring knowledge. So it's a serious problem.